June 23rd, 2018, I lost my dad to cancer. He was diagnosed in September in 2017 and he died not even a year later. The story begins back in August of 2017, which is when my dad was having the tests to find out what was going on with him. For many months my dad felt a lot of pain in his stomach. He wasn't getting food down him without throwing up, and we just felt something wasn't right, so we went straight to the doctors, and we had to ask for a lot of tests to be done. There was no cancer found in his blood tests. It wasn't until we had a scan that they found out that it was cancer. And I'm already getting teary about to start this video. I remember when I found out that my dad had the cancer, I was in rehearsals at university, which was so hard for me to find out over the phone and not to be with my family. But I had a great support system at university and I'm so thankful for everyone who was there. My dad was diagnosed with cancer in September in 2017 and he passed away in June 2018, so he didn't even have that year of battling it, but he was so brave throughout the time that we had him, and I'm so thankful for all the doctors and all the treatment that he did receive, because it did help, but for some reason, we don't know why, within 2 months everything just went downhill. It is still very fresh to me, and I feel like it would always be just a thing that comes back and it'll never feel right. You know, next month it's a year that I haven't had my dad, but when I think about it, and I remember the months that he was ill, you know, my dad was bedbound for a lot of the time that he was battling cancer, and I feel like actually when I do think about it, I lost my dad over a year ago. Because when he was diagnosed with the cancer, I've got tissue in my eye. When he was diagnosed with the cancer, it changed him. He became a very frightened person. You know, he didn't want to live life. I think one of the, you know, the most heartbreaking things was my dad already set himself up to pass away. He didn't allow, you know, any time to think, do you know, I actually might get through this. Whereas the rest of my family were so, you know, come on Bish, you're going to get through this, you're going to be fine. And I think I'm so thankful for us that we were there for him, that we were telling him to push himself, because he was actually predicted not to be with us by Christmas, so, which is a lot, you know, a lot of people don't know that, but my dad lived for a lot longer than he was meant to, and I'm so thankful to have him in my life, and I had a really happy 21 years, and I'm so grateful. I was blessed. I honestly, I could say I had a perfect life, but that's why I'm making this video, because I want to make people aware of how hard it is when you do lose your parent. My voice is cracking all over the place, because I feel like it's extremely hard, and it will happen to all of us at one point in our lives, which is really upsetting. You know, some people it happens straight away, they don't even meet their parents when they're born. Other people live till they're 60 and then they only lose their parents then. It's a cycle, you know, life is a cycle, and I'm happy that my dad is out of pain, but I'm just sad that I don't have him here. I did want to talk more about my dad's journey, but I feel like starting this video, maybe I'm not ready for it. I don't want to be crying throughout the whole thing. It is still very fresh to me, and I do cry every time I think about it, because it's just so heartbreaking to think about. So I'm making this video to hopefully to help somebody, to anyone who does lose a parent, maybe not to cancer, to anything. Losing a parent is just as bad in any situation, and this video is just to make awareness of the things that you have to do and the things that you feel, and maybe the things that people don't really tend to talk about when they do lose a parent, that people may be unaware of. I've had a chat with myself. I've told myself to stop crying, so let's try and get through this video without being sad. So I've made a list of all of the things that I could personally think about, and the things that I've been affected affected by the things that I've been doing the last couple of months and the first couple of weeks when my dad passed away, just to make people aware, to help somebody out, because it is so difficult, especially if you've never lost anyone in your family before. For me personally, I've lost people in my family, but I've never lost anyone as close to me as my dad was. For people who don't know, my dad was my best friend. He was my go-to person for every single situation, any single question I had, no matter how stupid, no matter how little, he was always the guy that I would run to and phone to straight away. So it's like a chunk of my life has been taken out, and I have to rebuild that, you know, that quarter of my life. But I'm slowly getting there, and this will hopefully show you guys how hard it's been, and it will hopefully help somebody out there, not even now, maybe in a couple of years, just so this video is up there for somebody to click on and to enjoy. The things that people don't tell you about losing a parent, there's a lot, and I mean there is a lot, but I've just chosen things that I think people need to know about first, the things that you will struggle with most in general. Let's get straight into it. So when my dad passed away, I remember the day so well, as if it was yesterday, but I cannot, that's my dog snoring, I'm so sorry, it wasn't me. I can honestly say it doesn't sink in for a while. The first thing that you feel is shock, and you know, you're angry, you cry so much, you don't want to sleep, you don't want to eat, and that's the first part of grieving, I would say. And that's probably one of the hardest things, but you don't actually remember it in that way because you're so grateful to have that day if you are by their side, which I was by my dad's side. But at the same time, it's a struggle because you then have to live with that memory, and no, don't cry. You then have that memory as well of your parent passing, which, you know, growing up you never think about, oh, I'm gonna see my dad pass one day. You just don't think of that, you know. Obviously you have, you know, you sometimes have them times where you look at your parent and you think, how the hell am I going to live without you? But you actually don't think about or even come close to terms of how it's going to be. So I feel like it just doesn't sink in for a while. For me personally, I didn't accept it till about January this year, and I constantly spoke about my dad as if he was here, you know, like, oh, my dad does that, my dad does this, he's like that. Whereas now I've gotten into the routine of saying my dad was like that, and that's quite sad actually. No matter how much you put up on your social media, I miss my dad, I do this, you put up several tweets and things like that, and you expect people to understand what you're going through. If they haven't gone through the process, and even if they have, sometimes they still, you know, they still won't know what to say, and they still won't know what's actually truly going on in your life. And I think it's okay to accept that people don't know what to say. If they're there for you and, you know, they're standing there and they're not saying anything, that's enough. To have people around and to make you feel like you're not alone is so much help. The second thing that you will come to discover is people don't know what to say. Especially at the funeral, I found there was a lot of people that I wanted to talk to, and I was expecting to sort of approach me because I was being approached by people and I thought that they would wait to talk to me. There was a lot of people that I didn't have the chance to speak to, and I think that's because they're in their own process of grieving, and that's okay. Don't, you know, don't feel like it's a personal thing when people don't approach you and they don't know what to say. You know, if they say I'm sorry for your loss and that's about it, thank them, and that might have taken them a long time to come to terms with and to accept themselves, and to say I'm sorry for your loss is really hard for somebody sometimes. People just don't know what to say, and because they don't know what you're going through, truly when you're grieving, people actually never know what you're thinking and what's actually happening in your life. This might not happen to everybody, but personally it did to me, and that was that this might be the first time where you see a lot of your friends and your family cry. Growing up, my mum has never been the person to really cry, but it was heartbreaking to see her. It wasn't even cries, it was, I can't even find the word for it. And it's a really hard thing to see and to process in your mind as well, and you sort of get a kick up your ass, and you feel like you need to start doing things for other people more in your family, and you feel like you need to become the head of family. I feel like that's a point later, I've made it now though, but it's really difficult. But I would say, if you want to cry and you want to be strong for other people, the time for you to cry is now. Don't hide your emotions, it will bottle up inside of you. And I'd done that for the first 2 months, and I barely cried. I had a lot of things to get done, and I feel like after graduation, my graduation was in September, that was when I truly started to grieve, just because I was so busy. So if you do have the time, and you can, you know, take time off work, and you can work part-time, or you can stay at home and do the things that you always wanted to do but grieve at the same time, then do it, because the best time to grieve is when it's happened. Otherwise you're just putting the grieving on hold, and it will happen. There is no way of delaying that process. This is also something that I experienced, and when I spoke to a lot of people who'd already lost their parents a couple of years older than me, they said exactly the same thing, and that is that from the time that your parent, whoever, passes to maybe about 2 weeks after, you will not remember what you done. Even now when I think back, I remember arranging the funeral, but that was such a tiny part, and I honestly can only remember, you know, arranging the flower, arranging the coffin, what times, you know, going to print out my dad's picture and a big poster to put in a frame, things like that. But I cannot remember the times that I sat at home, I sat in my bed crying, not eating, because I think you're still in a stage of shock, and to remember that now, it's really difficult to get those memories back from your brain, which I would say it's a bit of a pleasant thing actually, because you don't remember the bad times, which forces you to try and get back the memories from all the good times that you had with that person, especially if the person that's passed had an illness. You don't want to constantly remember that person for being ill. You want to remember all the times that you've had with them, the good times, because really, when you think about it, especially with my dad, he was so healthy throughout his whole life, and I started to accept a couple of months down the line that he was ill, but that was such a small part of his life, and he had so many happy memories, way more happy memories than he did sad memories. So why do I always think back to him being ill? So the sooner you accept that the person is ill, and that's done and that's dusted, the sooner you can come to terms with what's happened, and you can be happy and remember all those happy memories. Point number 5 I already made earlier, in regards to you'll feel like you need to step up and you need to become the head of family. For me personally, that's been a massive thing, and I'm actually really proud to say the amount of things that I've done. I took care of all my dad's paperwork, and that was probably one of the things where I put my grieving process on hold, because I wanted to do that, and it was one of the most important things that you had to do. But I'm really proud of myself for doing that, and for helping out, and for being there for my mum for so long. I feel like my dad would be so proud and so happy for me. And yeah, I feel like stepping up and trying to become somebody a bit more of an adult figure in your family, it really shows that person that's left that you can be okay, and that maybe you can try and get by without them. Not in a sense of, oh, they're gone, I need to step up now. In a sense of, I need to follow that person's footsteps, because they were a huge inspiration to me in my life. And that's I've got a tissue because I feel like I might tear up at this. But this is something that you see in the movies and you don't ever expect to happen, but your last words will always flash back, and you'll always you'll be walking down the street one day and you'll think, oh, my last words. If they're good, if they're bad. For me personally, I feel like I could have said so much more, and I still hold on to the guilt from that. But your last words are so important. I've learnt now, you know, I tell my mum I love her pretty much 3 times a day now, maybe too much and it does annoy her, but I just feel like I've become such a grateful person, and I always think about what I say to people, because you truly never know when your last words are going to be. Some people leave and they go to the shop and they don't come back, and that's the cycle of life, but your last words are so important. So just always be grateful. If you argue with someone, just be the bigger person, because life is so short. Guilt and regret. This is huge when you lose a parent, I think. And when I first lost my dad, I watched a lot of videos to try and help me through grieving, because it was the first time in my life that I was grieving. I was trying to understand all of the emotions that I was feeling, and I was trying to get all the anger out of me and trying to put the blame on somebody, when realistically there is no blame to put on anyone. I believe that everything happens for a reason, and if it was meant to be that my dad was meant to be cured, it would have been. But I carry a lot of guilt with me. I think, don't cry. I think because I was at uni and my dad wanted me to be at uni, he wouldn't, you know, we had several discussions where I rang up and I said, look, if you want me to hold back a year, I can do that. I can come home and I can be there, and no matter how long it takes, I can put my degree on hold. And my dad was just so proud that I was at uni, and he was, you know, he always said, no, I want you to go and have fun. I know that you're thinking of me every day. And, you know, it's true. I was, you know, there was a lot of support that I gave from being at uni, but it doesn't mean that I won't carry that guilt with me. And I always think, oh, I could have had so much extra time with him. But the thing is, my dad just wanted me to go off to uni. He knew how much I loved it, and he always wanted to go to uni himself, and I felt like he was living his dream through me. And it was so nice to have that support from him, and for him to tell me, you know, to go off. And I always felt bad going on nights out because I was partying while my dad was in bed, you know, very ill. But he never ever said to me, why are you doing that? He always said, you know, I'm so glad that you put yourself out there and that you went to party. But even in my lessons at uni, I really struggled. I remember there was one lesson in ballet, I was just not in the mood at all, and there was 3 girls in my class that absolutely helped me so much, and they know who they are. But my whole year group helped me so much, and I'm so grateful for that. It's so important to remember that that person would not want you to feel like that, because life is too short. Everything happens for a reason. You know, when I think back on my life, I was always on my dad's side as well. I'm so sorry, Mum. And I know that he always loved that, and he would never want me to feel guilty for going off to uni and, you know, for staying there. So just let it go. This is only a tiny point, but I thought I would put it in there anyway. And I did mention it earlier in the video, which is paperwork. There is a lot to be done. You need to register the deaf and things like that I didn't even know that you had to do. So you learn a lot as you go on. So all of the paperwork takes weeks on end, but it does get to a point where it's nearly done. For me, I'm still dealing with things, and, you know, I'm making mistakes and I'm learning from my mistakes, but paperwork. So point number 9, this might not apply to everybody, because grief is different to everybody. No process is the same. But for me personally, I found out a couple of months down the line that I can't rush the process of grieving. I tried to block it out for at least a month, 2 months, when my dad passed, and even now I'm still a bit like, oh my god, stop being sad, you know, like, pick yourself up off the floor and just do something in your life. But it just can't be rushed, and that's okay. Everything happens how it's meant to happen, and if you don't grieve now, then you'll never finish that process. So just take your time. Grieving is a completely normal thing. Every single one of us goes through it. If you want to cry, you cry. If you don't want to cry, you don't want to cry. If you want to laugh, don't feel guilty about laughing, because that person probably loves your laugh and they want to see you laughing and having a nice time. So go ahead and do the things that you've always wanted to do, but just don't rush the process. I'm going to get emotional because this is the hardest point for me to talk about. Because for me personally, I'm gonna get emotional at this because this is the hardest point for me to talk about. Because when I remember every single night when I used to go to bed when I was a teenager, I used to thank God for the parents that I had and all of the things that we had done together, and I used to pray for a blessed life. And I never ever imagined losing my dad at 21 because he was so healthy. But so point number 12 is you have to accept that, I was playing with my tissue if there was a noise, you have to accept that those people will no longer be at events that you've planned, that you've dreamed of having together. The first event that I had to go to without my dad was my graduation, and I was the first kid in my family to be graduating from uni, so it's a big deal, and he wasn't there. And I even remember when I was booking the tickets, I put into the little box, can I please have my seat next to the door, because my dad is unwell and he will need to probably leave at some point if he's feeling unwell, which, you know, was actually really sad to think about. And it was so sad to go to graduation and have those pictures without him. But I know that he would have been really proud, and he is really proud. And I feel like there's a lot of events that we planned. We plan to go to America sometime in the next 2 years to go on a tour around the whole of America, which we just wanted to do for so many years together. But the thing that I'm struggling to accept is my wedding. And it is really hard to accept, and I don't think I will accept it. Even if I get married in 10 years, those 10 years will fly by, and on the wedding day it will still feel empty. So it's really hard to accept all of the events that there will no longer be. And this one applies to, you know, not every single person, but there have been a lot of people that I've spoken to that have moved house after a parent dies, because it doesn't feel like home. It feels empty, especially, you know, if you were like my family always ate dinner together, my family always sat down at the end of the day at TV, and, you know, we would watch programs together. For example, Love Island, where my dad would absolutely take the piss and my mum would just sit on her phone thinking, why the hell are we watching this? And it's little things like that that make a house a home, and it's just really hard to be here sometimes, especially because my dad was bedbound. We had a hospital bed in his room, and it's really difficult to go in there sometimes, and you think back and you have flashbacks of all the memories of him, of that person laying bedbound, and it is quite difficult. So your house may feel a little bit different. I think the first couple of months are the worst, but it does get better with time. For example, this week I've slept on my bed for a whole week, for the first time since my dad died, because I always slept with my mum since he passed away, because my dad was a massive snorer. So every night I would go to bed and I'd lay down, and if he wasn't snoring then I wouldn't fall asleep. As soon as he started snoring, that meant, okay, I'm in for a great night of sleep. So it's been hard getting used to not hearing massive snores. And I think it just has to be accepted. You can't force people to try and care for a long time. If they care, then they'll be there for life. And I'm so grateful for the people who still mention my dad and still visit his grave and still message us to see how we are and send cards and send flowers, and that's so lovely to have that support. But there does come a time where you think, oh my gosh, what if it's just me at the end of the day that thinks about him. There's 2 points left. I'm really sorry if this video is extremely long by now, but that point is that you'll dread that one day people will start to forget that person, and I think for me personally, yes, I do dread that. And it's, you sort of notice people start to forget, and they don't visit the grave as much as they used to, and they don't text you to see how you are anymore because they think you're okay, because it just rounds up the whole video. And that is that it changes you. Losing a parent changes you, and I feel like sometimes it might change you for the worse, but in my case it's changed me for the better. I've become a more grateful, more calm, more forgiving person, and I'm slowly growing to love my personality, and I've noticed things that maybe I've always done throughout my life that I've never been proud of, you know. For example, putting other people first. I've always done that, but I've never noticed it till now. And my mum is so grateful to have that, and I'm really grateful to help her. But it does change you, and it changes your lifestyle, because you'll never have another normal day. For some people that is a horrible thing to accept, and that is a horrible thing to accept for me. But you start to live a new life, and you start to grow into a different person. I just want to say a massive thank you for watching this video. I'm so sorry if I've made anyone sad. I really hope that this video does help someone out there, even if it helps one person. That will make me so happy. I've put a couple of links in my description box below for bereavement groups that people do want to attend to. I do recommend going to some. I feel like it's really, really nice if you don't have that support system at home. So please follow any of those links. Of course, I'm here if you want to message me, if you do feel comfortable enough. And thank you so much for your support.